Good morning, everybody, and this morning we're in Kusadasi, Turkey, and we're going to visit Ephesus for the bulk of the day. And stay tuned, you get to see our adventure, see what we find. All right, the day is just coming into focus, but it's going to be a long day. We're off to visit Ephesus, Mary's house, a museum, and the Basilica of St. John, and we're being led today by our tour guide, Jayla.
In order not to make you very tired, I will try to tell you the long stories when you are here.
Our first stop this morning would be Mary's house up on the Bulbul Mountain above Ephesus. So we turned past the site, climbed the hill, and were greeted by a nice, crisp, cold morning. Now, Jayla cautioned us on throwing coins into the baptism pool because if you do so and make a prayer for a pregnancy, it can happen. She says she's proof of that, so we were warned. So after being greeted by the guard dog, it was just a short trip up to the house. So the Christian tradition has it that Mary would have traveled to Ephesus with St. John, who was commissioned by Christ from the cross to take care of his mother. The two would have traveled to Ephesus to avoid persecution in Jerusalem. And it's widely thought that putting Mary several miles outside of the town, up the hills, would protect her. So the chapel itself is likely not where the house of Mary would have really been, as it's a Byzantine structure from the late Byzantine period. Although archaeological digs in 2003 did find a house structure as well as ceramics that were dated back to the 1st century CE. Now, the site has also been visited by 3 different popes, and this is an official pilgrimage site for the Catholic Church, but it is also a very important site to the Muslim community, as Mary is revered in the Quran. These fountains connect to the local spring, which is holy water, as it was the same spring that Mary drank from. And each one of the taps provide for a blessing for either wealth, health, or fertility. Now, they're not labeled, so I guess I'll let you all know which one I got. Now, heading back for the bus, we stopped at the local restroom facilities, which had a wonderful view. And as you would expect, the facilities were just immaculate. So as our party gathered, getting ready to get back on the bus by grabbing a coffee or visiting the gift shop, which does take Visa, we caught a little bit of the local entertainment. Once on the bus, it was about a 10-minute ride back down the mountain to the back gate of Ephesus. Now, this excursion was included with our fare on Silver Sea, and it provided all the entrance fees to the archaeological sites and Mary's house, as well as the museum and the Basilica of St. John, as well as a late lunch on the way back to the ship. We began the tour at the upper part of Ephesus, which is also known as the administrative area, where the nobles or rulers of Ephesus would have lived and worked, including their gymnasiums, their plumbing, and the Odeon of Ephesus. Jayla told us to enjoy our time as nobility because it would soon end. And the Odeon was used both as a parliamentary building as well as a venue for concerts and plays. Time as nobles over, we head through the Heracles Gates, see the Memmius Monument, erected for a general who saved Ephesus from invasion in 88 BC, and we head down Caretas Street. And we were warned specifically by Jayla to take it very slow over this section, as it's very slick with the marble stones and streets and the slant to the road as we headed down towards the library and the harbor. So near the Temple of Domitian, we had a chance to commune with some of the local cats. And one of these cats was very, very important. You see, this cat is sitting upon a pillar. On one side is a relief to medicine, and on the other is Hermes. So all the ladies were encouraged in the group to touch Hermes and tell the cat what your order is, and your bag would magically appear. What stands out to me about Ephesus compared to other ancient cities that we've visited is the number of buildings or actual temples that pay homage to emperors, living people, or people who once lived, such as Domitian, Trajan, Hadrian, amongst others in the ruins. The Empire of Cult was something that we weren't familiar with, but it was a way in the ancient Greek world to link cities to the success and patronage of Rome, similar to the way that the Greeks would have venerated rulers such as Alexander in the past. One of the best preserved of these temples was the Temple of Hadrian, with the Medusa staring right back at us. Now, in some of our shots here, looking down Kusadasi Street and in front of the Library of Celsus, you can see a pretty decent-sized crowd, but evidently that's nothing compared to the crowds that exist in summer at the site. And Jayla had warned us that if you do visit in summer, think of it as a short trip to hell because of the crowds, the heat, and the humidity. The mosaic floors in front of the terrace houses on Kusadasi Street were, as Jayla described it, part of upscale shopping. Think of Champs-Élysées of ancient Ephesus. So even though we weren't in Europe technically anymore, there was still a toll to be paid. So a suggestion was to leave your euro with the cat in order to enter the public toilets. And yes, even 2,000 years ago, you would have had to pay to use these facilities, which had running water rushing below you, as well as a nice pool garden area in the center of the room. Running water was very sophisticated in this city, fed by as many as 6 different aqueducts. As we reach the bottom of Kusadasi Street, we arrive at one of the most iconic buildings in the ancient world, the Library of Celsus. Now, this library would not only have been a place to store scholarly texts, but it was also a tomb. The library in its heyday would have held over 12,000 scrolls and was the 3rd largest library of the ancient world. These 2,000-year-old gates are the gates of Mazius and Mithridates, and were built for the Emperor Augustus. And the gates lead to the commercial agora. Across from the Library of Celsus is the House of Pleasure. So we'll take a wander through the small rooms of this old house and talk a little bit about a way to get in. Of course, there was a regular front door, but there was also a tunnel leading from the Library of Celsus into the House of Pleasure for those who wanted to take a break from their more scholarly activities. The thing about Ephesus is when Romans realized that lead was poisonous, they replaced them with these terracotta pipes that held up extremely well. Leaving the pleasures behind, we get to commune with some of the residents of Ephesus. So Ephesus was always a crossroads, if you will, for commercial activity. So Jayla pointed out to us a pictograph on the marble steps coming into the city that noted how to get to the House of Pleasure for sailors coming from the harbor. We did have one disappointment on this trip, which is the theater at Ephesus was closed for renovation. Now, this is the grand theater that held over 25,000 spectators for plays, games, and the like. And we would have liked to actually be able to stand where the Apostle Paul preached to the people of Ephesus. But the best we could do is grab a couple of pictures from outside, gaze at the magnificent boulevard that led to the harbor, and get back on the bus and head to the museum. Just a short ride back in Selkuk, we started our tour of the museum in the Hall of the Mother Goddess cult, and that quickly led us to the Hall of Ephesus Artemis. Now, Artemis to the Ephesians was not so much the hunt goddess as she was the goddess of fertility and motherhood. She's often described as having multiple breasts apparent, but we learned on this trip that those might not be breasts. In fact, they might be bull testicles, as those were commonly hung around statues of Artemis during festivals. The Temple of Artemis is one of the 7 ancient wonders of the world and was absolutely massive and a place of pilgrimage for people from throughout the Greek and Roman world. And of course, as Paul learned, Artemis was big business and not to be trifled with. Further exhibits in this part of the museum are dedicated to the imperial cult, with statuary and busts of emperors as well as local leaders, and this oversized fragment of Domitian, which was ripped down after the emperor's death. The museum also has a coin collection with some of the oldest known coins to be used as money anywhere in the world. We get a bit of a glimpse of daily life through household items as well as the internal of a house. One thing that we found fascinating was the bust of Socrates, which was in one of the wealthy houses, as Socrates was very much revered by the Romans. All in all, a very nice small museum, but now it's time to head to the Basilica of St. John. So Basilica and fortification were on the high ground where likely the original city of Ephesus was founded. We entered the Basilica grounds through the Persecution Gate and quickly find out that there's not much basilica really left. It was built originally by Emperor Justinian in the 6th century to replace a mausoleum church that had been built earlier that had been destroyed by raids and earthquakes. From our hillside perspective, we can see the Isabe Mosque, as well as the last remaining column from the Temple of Artemis. A significant amount of the building materials for the Basilica of St. John were taken from the Temple of Artemis, as well as there are other columns that exist in the British Museum. Coming into the basilica to the center, we find the tomb of St. John. So today we can only imagine this grand cross-shaped church with 6 domes, with the central dome over the tomb of St. John. This church fell to the same forces as did its predecessor, earthquakes, and in 1402, a raid by Mongol invaders that destroyed the basilica. This was definitely an active excursion, and after about 6 hours on our feet, it was time to go grab a little lunch at a local hotel back in Kusadasi. Compared to our meager snacks that we had in Crete a couple days ago, we actually were fed very well with some Turkish specialties. My favorite, though, were the lamb sausage meatballs. They were excellent. as well as a little sweet dessert. Cat's going to the slide. We had a little time to explore the market of Kusadasi. It was a beautiful setting, but after the long day of touring, you really have to be in the right mood to bargain and dicker with every single shopkeeper who greets you in the street. And we had a treat upon our return. We had asked our butler, Danielle, for a little caviar and champagne setup so that we could get ready for dinner with a nice little snack when we got back to our cabin. For dinner tonight, it's the Hot Rocks up at the grill on 9. And the tale of two appetizers, a nice fried onion and a tabbouleh salad for the health conscious. And you know you're in for a treat when they put a smock on you before they bring out the flaming hot rocks. So just listen to this sizzle.
Let me know and I will get another one, okay? So, and I will put the skewer here.
Oh, okay.
And
Is that teriyaki?
There we go. So the meat up in the grill is absolutely spectacular. Those giant prawns, they looked great on the grill. They were a little fishy, so what we needed to do is finish off dinner with another round of fillets. And just one baked s'more, since it was also chocolate night. So no show tonight. Instead, the band and our singers were in the Panorama Lounge, which got really crowded really quickly. As I said in the earlier videos, this was an excellent band and our singers were top notch and people just felt like dancing. And one of our real critiques of the Silver Spirit is not having a big enough venue for something like a dance party. We've been on 300-person ships that had bigger areas for entertainment where we could all get together just about the entire ship and enjoy live music and dance. Wasn't too crowded though for Donna Doobie to go out and cut the rug with one of our new friends from the UK, Alf. So our ears ringing a little bit and legs a little tired from the dancing and all of the exploring today. We decided to head down to the chocolate bar, or chocolate night in Dolce Vita Lounge. Here's where the chefs really show off their craftsmanship in creating some absolutely fantastic desserts and displays. So now with just the right balance of sugar and alcohol in our system, we'll take one more view of Kusadasi and we'll say goodnight and hopefully see you in Mykonos tomorrow.